Good morning, Flickin' Fanatics. We are back again with a review for Disney Plus Marvel Studios Miss Marvel, the highly anticipated debut of one Kamala Khan. If you're a fan of her in the comics, I think there's a lot in here for you in this show. But we're going to break it down in each of our individual experiences with the show. Did it meet our expectations, exceed it? All that good stuff. And let us know what you thought in the comments down below. And make sure to like and subscribe the video if you haven't already. And we'll see you in a second. Hey, you know what's funny is like on my screen I see about 2 seconds of that video. The rest is just hey, good morning everybody, or afternoon, evening, whatever time it is that you are watching this. We got I almost said the whole crew, but that would be sexist. We are down one Allison Salamoni, but we are up one Pastor Dad Scott Fox. Hey, Scott and Sean, how is everyone doing this morning?
Doing good.
Fantastic.
Miss Allison running around.
I woke up
with the same one.
The same one. Cheers.
I have my fishing cup full of coffee.
Yum.
Gotta remember to us and to Flick and Reel, you are a friend, but to several others, you are a father, and that
yes,
is evidence of that.
Yeah. Well, actually, the fun thing is, I got this from my mother-in-law, who knows I like to fish. Now, I like to fish. What negatively happens though is fish don't like to bite my line, and so really, what I do is throw things in a river or in a lake, and then drag them back out for hours on end.
That's a fun new sport.
But, it keeps me busy, and it's relaxing and therapeutic, so you do it.
Well, people that are good at throwing out the bait and reeling in some fish is Disney, because they keep reeling us in with these shows. We got this review right now, and then shortly thereafter, our review for episode 4 of Obi-Wan. We were a little preoccupado with episode 3, ironically, which is probably the best one. But that's how life works out, and they don't pay us enough to do this yet. All right,
you guys. Get paid?
Isn't that the question?
One of the things I want to bring up, and maybe the people in the comments can pitch in as well, but what were you guys' expectations going into Miss Marvel? Have you had any introduction to the character of Kamala Khan? Obviously, none of us have heard of Iman Vellani. This is her first acting gig, which I thought she excelled at. Mm-hmm. But what is your experience? I want to start with Sean today.
Me? Sean. Miss Marvel. I guess. I mean, I knew of her. I didn't know. I knew of her and like what her general power set was, which they've obviously changed a little bit for the show. But I guess my introduction would have been the video game, the Marvel's Avengers video game that came out like 2 years ago now. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't stick with the game. It didn't get me to buy. I did like the beta version and played it for a few hours. It was all right. It was fun.
Stay
it was
tuned for our next video, which is why you're wrong on the Avengers the game. Sorry, me
it was a little
and
more,
Brian from POV.
It was a little more of the same, and I had just gotten so burnt out on Destiny, and it was a very similar type of game of loot and build up your weapon and loot, and I had already burnt myself out on a previous game of the same style, so I just didn't stick with it. But I did like the story. I liked that she was the main character, being, essentially a fangirl of the Avengers and then learning to become one of the Avengers. And she was pretty cool. In this version of her, she's very younger. She's different, because we're getting more of her family, her backstory, her friendships and stuff like that. And obviously, until the end of the first episode, she doesn't have any powers yet. She's just, wishing and hoping to be one of these people. So I'm not super attached to her power set from the comics because I don't know about it. I know, obviously she's an Inhuman. She's not going to be that in this show, or unless they retcon a bunch down the road.
Perlmutter kind of ruined the Inhumans for Kevin Feige. So,
but you know what? They the slight spoilers for a movie that came out a few months ago, but they brought back Anson Mount. Maybe they can somehow, work the Inhumans back in.
They only brought him back for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but still, he got a big pop in my theater when he showed up on screen.
This guy's got a lot of jokes, people.
No, you know what? There was a lot of surprising cameos in that, but I think Anson Mounts was the most mind blowing.
The puns are running thick today.
Left me speechless, to be honest.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have a pun to go with it, but yeah, when I did not see what happened to him coming,
no,
at all.
I don't think many people did.
Scott, what do you know about Miss Marvel? I think you were saying not a lot going into the show.
I'm gonna go ahead and just be honest and say I knew absolutely zero, so my expectations were zero. Other than the trailer seemed really hip, cool, and catchy, but some of the fans of this channel may know, and some people watching right now may look at my face and recognize I'm old. I have no hair, and if I did, there'd be a lot of gray in it, as is recognized by my beard. And the young, hip, cool things tend to be like, okay, I struggle catching on. Not that I'm not with it and hip, but I didn't really know what to expect out of this. I didn't know the character, didn't know the backstory, didn't know any of the powers, any of those things. So the great thing is it was fresh, it was clean, it was a brand new introduction to somebody, and I didn't have all these preset things in my head. And so I intentionally didn't research the character because I didn't want to be swayed one direction or other with false expectations. We talk about that all the time, where that sets people up for disaster. When you believe you're going to get something else and you don't. Matter of fact, we're dealing with that in the show that's coming directly following this one that we'll be talking about, where expectations for that show were really high. And so Disney and Star Wars had a lot to live up to. Whereas with this one, it was a blank slate, which was great because I would rather have the blank slate and take it all in fresh and new. That's one of the reasons I avoid trailers right near the end of when movies come out. I'll usually watch the first teaser, maybe trailer number 1, and then stop. I don't want to take too much in. If it's something I'm actually going to be watching and excited about, I want to take it all. And they did it. I was pleasantly surprised with this because not knowing much about it, it didn't make me feel like I was completely disconnected because I'm a little bit older. It was beautifully done. Stylistically, this show was similar to the stylistic of Amazing Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, which Into the Spider-Verse, very cool, very hip, artistically with the comic book drawing,
alive.
And all the things.
Yeah.
The show really, it caught my attention and kind of held it, which was great because, I initially, when I saw it come up, I was like 49 minutes. Sit through an hour of an intro, but the way they did it was really well done. And they actually, I love that they captured the cultural differences between a Middle Eastern family, a Muslim family, Pakistani, and what that family dynamic looks like. I love the driver's ed thing, and where the mom's like, I taught her myself. What do you say? What are you trying to tell me that she
didn't turn her head enough for your little clipboard?
They're chastising the driver's ed teacher. Like, no, she's the reason I'm walking home. Right. So there's a lot of really good. I love the relationship dynamic between her and her best friend. Also his cool design for the gloves, the things that he did, their cosplay was well above anybody else.
Bruno is the friend we all wish we had. I'm looking at you, Sean. I'm just kidding.
The guy who can make anything and brings it to life.
We don't talk about him. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Before
it was good. I was pleased.
Yeah.
How about you?
Before we get too much into the show, I'll try to be quick because we're already approaching about the 10-minute mark. But I guess out of the three of us, I knew the most about Miss Marvel.
Definitely.
She's popped in and out.
Well, out of the three, Allison, obviously the expert, but she's not here.
Allison is the unfortunately,
Always.
she always says she doesn't want us to make us look bad, so she doesn't come on these shows to educate us. But and then we have our friend Pat from Montyverse. You guys should check out there. He did a whole 12-minute long breakdown of Miss Marvel, so you can get more educated than all three of us combined. So she's been in and out of the comics, and then I have a friend Nassim, who is also Muslim, and once Miss Marvel came into comics, she wasn't a huge comic book reader, but she gravitated towards Miss Marvel instantly. And when we were closer friends, she was always telling me about how cool Miss Marvel was, how she wished they'd do a Miss Marvel movie or something like that. So she was very excited for this. And that led me to then go to my comic book shop, and I read the first volume, which is probably about 6-7 issues of Miss Marvel. I thought it was adorable, fun, heartwarming, eye-opening to some of the Pakistani culture relationships with this show is also doing. And I understand that a lot of people are frustrated. I was also confused at first when they changed her power set. But what's important to me is this show is so wholly at its core Kamala. They nailed Kamala Khan absolutely right. And the relationships with her parents, with her brother, it's all great. So I went into this show optimistic. Obviously, we're not familiar with Iman, but I've already fallen in love with her as the character, and I think it's fantastic. And if you would have told me a year ago, there's a new season of The Boys, new season of Stranger Things, we got Obi-Wan and Miss Marvel, what do you think is going to be your favorite? I would not have thought Obi-Wan was at the bottom of that list, but that is something we're going to address here shortly. But anyways, yeah, you guys, everyone watching this now or later, let us know what you thought of the show. How much do you know about Kamala Khan? And if you don't know anything, get yourself educated. Anyways, now let's get into the show. This show had me in the first 30 seconds. I don't know about you guys, but when we got the almost South Parky paper cutout reenactment of Endgame with the voiceover of Kamala, the charm just washed over me. And it didn't matter to me what was coming next. I was super into it. The references to the Scott Lang podcast. This felt like a show.
Mini-Me's Mini Pot. What was it called?
Oh, I don't remember the name of the. I know hers was Baby Sloth or something.
Hers is Baby Sloth, yes, which is hilarious. I will find the podcast name because I actually have the video pulled up. I was gonna show a clip thing, but you keep going.
My cat's about to kill himself. Hang on 1 second.
So we were talking about it earlier. I just want to say one of the things they nailed in this, and we were talking about and have been for a few minutes, is expectations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Her struggle to live up to the expectations of her parents, and then also being settled and being confident in who she is as an individual, is such a. They did a great job of painting that picture of the struggle of a youth. And I have two teenagers. I have a 16 and a 13-year-old about to be 14, so 16 and 14, and I understand the challenge of expectations for a parent, and also I remember as a kid living up to the expectations of what my parents thought, and her intense struggle to be a part of her family unit, live up to what they have, but then also find her own way in the world. They did a beautiful job of showing the tension in that.
Yeah, and I think what's difficult to do is having a character this much younger than all of us. She's 15, I'm just shy of 30, so at the youngest, I'm twice her age, right? Out of our group. But there's so many things that are relatable, and a lot of the things I'm hearing is not just from Muslim representation and stuff, but I'm hearing a lot of people that their parents are first generation immigrants really are relating heavily to the show. And I think that's something beautiful. And I was having a conversation with somebody at work that's a much, much more casual fan. And they seem to push back on the things coming out, the Miss Marvel, the She-Hulk and stuff like that, because they're like, oh, Marvel's just cash grabbing. They're really reaching at straws. I was like, my guy, I love Marvel enough that it's all for me. And that's fine. But I recognize that it's not all going to be for everybody. And I wish people would stop having that expectation and trying to crap on the brand, because they're like, oh, that doesn't look interesting to me. I'm like, That's okay. If you read comics, do you go to the comic book store and grab the entire shelf? No, you grab what appeals to you. And they might all be interconnected and stuff, but if you get to the point where you're missing a single thing, I don't think you're going to be completely lost.
Well, also, like,
so many different audiences.
To that point, like, or that note of oh, they're just cash grabbing or whatever. First of all, yeah, I mean, they're making a product. They want to make money off of it. That is literally the point of everything. It's not just this show. Also, what Iron Man was like a C-level character. Most of the Avengers were not in the forefront. The Justice League has been the forefront of comic book characters prior to 2008 for 30 years because DC just owned the market for the most part, right? Maybe comics, but like in visual media of like, you know, movies and TV shows and stuff like that. And who the hell were the Guardians of the Galaxy before 2014? No one knew.
Nobody called that a cash grab.
Right. And that's like one of my top 3 MCU films, to be honest. Like so introducing new characters is just that, introducing new characters. We've told the story of the big hitters for the most part. We have Thor, you know, the 4th Thor movie coming out.
As long as they continue to present us with good stories.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who they're about.
But yeah, the 4th Thor movie is coming out, and we might not see him again after that, depending on how the storyline goes, or maybe not till an event film or something. So those are the history of the MCU. Now we're telling other stories in the MCU. And just like you said, you don't grab the whole shelf, maybe gravitate to what you like, or pay attention to the whole story if you like it, and, you know, just pick what appeals to you. Why do you have to denigrate the other ones?
The sad thing is there's always going to be people wanting to poo-poo stuff just for the sake of poo-pooing stuff. I'll be honest, I was one of the first ones after Endgame. I was on Marvel fatigue. Like I was done, and I don't know if it was total Marvel fatigue or if I was on character fatigue. Okay. And that might have been it. A lot of those characters we'd seen for a long time. Now, I love the fact that Chris Hemsworth is still fairly young and he could play Thor for a while longer. And I really hope that he gets a due justice and gets old man Thor at some point in his life before he gets to hang it up, kind of like Hugh Jackman did. But them breathing life into the franchise by continuing to bring in younger, new characters, plus Kamala Khan, you're going to be able to see this character for, I mean, she's 15.
Yeah.
We're going to see her next February-ish, I believe, in the Marvels with Brie Larson, which, by the way, guys, what over under, let's say 70% Brie Larson shows up by the end of the show?
I say cameo 100%.
Yeah, I think we'd see Brie Larson and Tiana Paris, right? That was the other Monica. Yeah. And I think I'd love to see them at the end, like, hey, come with us, we need you type of thing, or something like that.
Absolutely.
I do want to bring up Garth McMurray's comment right here. The thing I love about Miss Marvel is that it's so positive. The other MCU shows have had heavy stuff, but this one's starting off so light and fun, which I think is great. One thing Marvel has excelled in really is shifting tones, shifting focuses and stuff. Like you can have I'm trying to think of like Multiverse of Madness is a fairly darker film. Yeah. And then you can have something like Shang-Chi, which had dark moments, but I thought Shang-Chi was a lot more fun. Right.
I agree.
More poppy.
You're saying Falcon and the Winter Soldier when U.S. agent smashes the guy to death with the shield wasn't dark?
I was
laughing. Or wasn't uplifting and motivating? Like it wasn't that. Marvel has taken a little bit darker tone with some stuff. This one was very vibrant, colorful, energetic. Like it had good energy the whole show. There was not like big lulls in it where you're like, okay, this is terrible. There were some uncomfortable moments, like when she's walking through the school and engaging with other kids, but that's the awkward kid moment.
Yeah.
Right. That's what endears us to her, because all of us have had those moments that you're like, oh my gosh. Like we've all attempted to be popular or wanted to be more cool, or even the popular girl who secretly sneaks out to an Avengers Comic-Con thing. She's cooler than everybody else, and then suddenly she shows up in the Miss Marvel or the Captain Marvel gear, which is like the cheap costume off the over the counter. I got it from the Halloween store.
Yeah.
Scott brings up something that I want to bring to you guys, and that is one of the things I think that the show's already doing a great job of is subverting expectations and stereotypes that we have seen before in your Johnny Hughes type movies or your high school movies. the character that would at first glance seem to be your like Rachel McAdams in Mean Girls, Zoe, seems to already have more depth than that. Like maybe she tinges on being potentially rude, but she's not just a shallow bully and stuff. She is the popular girl, but she even, returns a compliment to Kamala, albeit a bit awkwardly. And
tried to invite her to do a party at her own house.
Yeah.
Like, do you do parties?
In every relationship she has, the relationship with her brother, you think it's going to be a continuously contentious relationship. A couple scenes later, he's like, I got your back. I'll talk to mom and dad. And then her parents, you think, are going to be one note, strict, just constant obstruction for Kamala. But they really care about her. They back her up with the driving lessons. And when her heart's broken because they tell her no to Avengers Con, they try to meet her halfway. And although it is a humiliating attempt, you can see that they love and care for her. So everything has more depth than what there is on the surface value. And I wanted to see if you guys had anything to speak to that point on.
I just want to say it endeared me to that dad so much when he attempted to connect by dressing up. And then it fell flat on its face. The number of times I have attempted to try and be cool with my kids and had it not work, I immediately was like, oh man, I know exactly how that guy feels. But you know what? It's as parents, you're towing a fine line of trying to stay engaged with your kids, hold them to an expectation, hold them accountable, teach them, bring them up right, but then also stay in that sweet spot where they still care about your opinion, you're still engaged in the relationship, and it's so fine. And sometimes you step a little over and you push it too far. Clearly the I'm gonna go as the Hulk and we'll go as twins, She-Hulk and the Hulk. It was super cringy and awkward, but at the same time you're like, man, that dad is giving his best effort. He's trying so hard. And it made me love him as a character. Plus the awkward relationship with them where he's like dancing around the room with his wife and everything. He seems like, while they may be very strict and rigid, he's still a loving dad and he's doing his best. Yeah. Which, again, there wasn't a character in this show that I couldn't find a way to be like, man, I really enjoy how they're portraying this character and building it in.
And it shows the family, and it shows the worldwide family dynamic that's not just one culture, where you're going to have kids rebelling and upsetting their parents, and parents feeling disappointed and getting, we as parents, Scott, you have older kids than I did. Mine are 8 and 10, but I get disappointed. I get disappointed that they don't glom onto the same things that I do sometimes. You know what I mean? And it does hurt my feelings, but I don't, you can't put that on them, type of thing. And so, I felt for that in that moment where I'm like, I know this is going to be coming in 5 years for my own kid, my own daughter, where I'm going to be so excited. She's just gonna be like, no, I'm never doing that. That's embarrassing. Go away. Like, I can't wait for that to happen. I'm sure that'll be fun.
On the note of Iman Vellani, I want to say that I agree she is fantastic, especially with it being her first role. And I want to encourage everyone, look up some of the interviews she's been doing. She's been on a lot of shows.
No, hold on. We got to block him now. We don't bring up Canada. Stop it, Roy.
You mean Northern Montana?
Northern America.
I've seen multiple channels that are kind of they take her kind of through the Marvel ringer, and they're just like throwing breakneck speed, like all these Marvel questions at her. Guys, she knows more about Marvel than either of us. Like, she was doing really. There was one that I watched where I think they really tried to dumb it down like she was any other just MCU actor. And one of the questions are like, what movie kicked off the MCU? She's like, Iron Man, and the runtime is 2 hours and 6 minutes. And I was like, fantastic.
Well, because I think she herself is like 18 or 19 years old. So
yeah, I think she's 19.
She has been watching these movies since she was 4 years old. Like, these are her Star Wars. These are, and most kids nowadays, Star Wars.
Sorry, I got to go take something for my arthritis and bad back.
like this is her, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. Like, the MCU is this generation. A lot of people argue too, what's bigger? What's the bigger franchise, the bigger IP? Is it Star Wars? Is it Marvel? Is it Harry Potter? Whatever it is. I think it's hands down MCU for now. Maybe overall, like historically, sure, it might be Star Wars because it has an extra 30 years.
50 years, yeah, and like look back. But
hindsight always gives us better perspective. But
sure,
but you really have to look. If you're counting hit for hit, there are more hits in the MCU and total as a whole than there are for any of the other franchises. The percentages are just off the charts for how good the product is.
Great movies in the MCU than there are total Star Wars films.
Yeah. Well, and on that, the MCU has had one guy orchestrating the magic the whole time, whereas the other franchises have had like different people come in and try and Rian Johnson it and subvert expectations and change everything. But I'll get off on a half-hour tangent about that. So
and created
MCU
the best
is
Star
clearly
Wars
the
movie
best.
in The Last Jedi.
One of the things I want to bring up in the episode, because we can bounce around, but one of the big set pieces of this episode was Avengers Con, because she snuck out. She had this big elaborate plan, which, by the way, I love anytime we get to daydream with Kamala and we get to go into her mind, because it's just so vibrant, hilarious, and absolutely the mind of a 15-year-old in the imagination. But what did we think of Avengers Con? I thought it looked like a lot of fun, a convention I would absolutely go to, even if it does seem a little. It's funny, it looks so expensive but so small at the same time.
Yeah,
well, it was being like they just rented a weird warehouse.
It was being held at Camp Lehigh, which is where Steve got his powers. Essentially, that's where he went through boot camp and training in New Jersey. So it could have been basically just a hangar. It might have just been like a plane hangar.
Can I just say that in her dream sequence where she's imagining how they're going to get to Avengers Con when they ride their bikes off of the bridge on top of the train was one of the coolest little moments. Like her little montage of how it's going to go is like, you're going to ride down a regular sidewalk like a normal human being, because that's how this works. And then she loses her bike trying to get onto the bus, and it's just so deflating.
Or just the way it starts out, running and jumping out to the branch, and the branch just snapping, and you're like, none of this is going to work.
Oh my gosh. That was one of those moments like everyone's done. Have you ever jumped and grabbed a branch and had it snap off? There's a moment in free fall when you're like, something's not right about this. And then you hit and you're like, yep, that's what was not right. That hurt really bad.
I haven't jumped onto a branch that has snapped, but I have climbed a tree and found a rotten branch and fell down many rungs.
I am a cable guy by day, a podcaster by weekend, and I have the amount of terror you feel when you're climbing up a telephone pole and immediately pull out one of the spikes on accident is not something you forget.
Now, is your real name Larry Tate or Chip Douglas?
And no, it is not, actually.
It's Ricardo. Ricky Ricardo. Sorry. Also, one of the best Jim Carrey movies of all time.
Cable guy. So Avengers Con, we can push through the next part of it, but I want to see, as soon as she puts the gauntlet on, or the bracelet, right? The brislet, what is it called? I don't know. The thing. She puts the thing on her wrist.
A bangle. And it's a bangle.
A bangle, yeah, right. It starts to envelop her, right? It starts to crawl up her arm, and you see the powers. And then she falls, and we see what at the time kind of looked like the ancestral realm from like
it's fascinating. I don't know what it is, but because maybe the purple colors and stuff.
It could be
something else going on. I don't know.
It also kind of looks, if you look at the shapes of the bodies, it kind of reminds me of the entire set of the Avengers in Endgame about to fight Thanos. I for some reason I can see Star-Lord like right over her shoulder, like the shape of his body and with his leather jacket. Like I don't know, but maybe I'm just imagining things. Or also one of these people too looks like they also have like a shawl, like a standard, like like Pakistani, like Middle Eastern, like a shawl over her head. Like maybe these are her ancestors, because obviously she got this bangle from her grandmother.
They're scrolls.
These could be previous versions of, whatever you're going to call this hero. Obviously, she's going to be Miss Marvel, but in the past. And so maybe this hero with this power set has been around for a long time.
Yeah. But when you bring up that it came from her grandma, and I think that reminded me of a really great line from her mom, where she said, "I wish I could say that she's just saying this because she's getting old, but she's always been like this."
I love that. Well, she even commented about other people being trapped in a fantasy instead of worrying about who they are, and living in to who you are as opposed to a fantasy of somebody else's life, and being part of this big cosmic thing, or just being herself. And I love at the very end when she's like, definitely a cosmic character in this, as she's playing with the power. But they did a beautiful job of that moment when she flips backward and kind of like is tumbling between the two different realms. It's one of those things that I have. That is going to be, that's a little foreshadow right there of the future of the show, where she's going to be struggling to or having to tap in to find out her full powers and where everything comes from. I am very curious how they're going to portray, like, was her grandmother a superhero, or has this been passed down generation to generation to generation within her family, and like a long line of heroes for forever. That moment of the revelation of her putting that on, plus they teased it and teased it and teased it. How many times did she have it try and shove her hand through, or look like she was about to put it on, and just kept putting it back in the bag? And then the moment she left the gloves, and I was thinking, man, how disappointing to leave the gloves in the bathroom. But then it turned out she didn't even need those.
Best for not getting mad at her.
Right.
No. Oh yeah. Yeah.
She was going to miss so much time. Yeah. Well, speaking of her power set too.
Go ahead.
I was going to bring up this clip. Speaking of her power set, the first time we see her use it, trying to rescue her friend. Hopefully this doesn't get pulled off of YouTube. But which was hilarious that she was still stuck on Thor's hammer during all this. But we see it extend out, and so you get all these gems and stuff. Obviously, before she had been shining it at the audience and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. The way they're doing that, instead of extending her body out, it's just going to be a projection.
Almost like Green Lantern. The reaching out with, was it hope or willpower?
Willpower.
Reaching out, yeah. It was. I like the way that they did it, and it had a different look, different feel. It was uniquely her own. It wasn't something where she's ripping off of another character, which was also a big thing to me. I didn't. With this show, one of the things I was afraid of is this just going to be another iteration of Captain Marvel, it transferred over, because I didn't know anything about the character, and I would prefer to have somebody with a completely unique skill set and ability.
Yeah.
And so almost like a Mr. Fantastic stretchy arm trying to catch. I think they did a beautiful
polymorph abilities, is what they called it in the comics, which not only is stretching and stuff, but the ability to morph into looking like other characters, and stuff. But she did have a very rubbery thing. She called it embiggen, because typically instead of just stretching every part of her, she could make parts of her bigger. It was akin to Mr. Fantastic, but it had enough differences to it, which I think they could have visually done it. But I'm here for what they're doing so far. It is different, but like I said, all the important parts of the character, the Pakistani heritage, the family connections, who Kamala is as a person, and her wish fulfillment and stuff like that is on point.
Agreed. Yeah, I was hooked from the first minute or two. As soon as they started in on it, and it was a great ride throughout the entire episode. I loved it all.
I do need to say, because physics are important to me, and comic book physics and movie physics don't always work out, but Ant-Man's head gained momentum as it hit things.
I thought about that a little bit.
And it just kept rolling. And as it destroyed things, it picked up speed as though it was flubber, and every action charged it.
This is our introduction. This is our introduction to mutants, because Juggernaut was in it like a hamster ball, and it just running in circles, and that's why it was plowing through everything.
This is going to be our next film. This is going to be our next series where Scott dissects the physics of every show, and what doesn't make sense. And
the head of Ant-Man
I love science.
The villain of the series.
Well, I actually was looking at this show in this first episode, wondering who the villain is going to be, and because you got to find it. And I'll be honest, the mad scientist, her best friend, had that weird edge. And so I'm just going to go out on a limb right now and say that I hope it's not.
Well,
but
we see the guy
tension portion too. Also,
we see the cop guy from No Way Home, right? So maybe I think the government's going to get involved, and that's going to be essentially the bad guy.
And
is maybe not him specifically, but he will, have. Oh, now we have video. Now we have data. Now we have. Oh no, the government needs to take control of her power set. Essentially,
that agent is an agent of the DODC, the Department of Damage Control, which I asked you about here recently when we were doing a study for this little other show, but They were introduced in Homecoming. Obviously, they're the ones that took over from Vulture, and we see them again in No Way Home with this actor. And it seems like we are going to very immediately be following up, perhaps in the next episode, because they said, "Yeah, we'll go get her." And it will be interesting to see what impact that has on the show moving forward. What that means is the Department of Damage Control at all in related to Sword. Because we know Monica worked for Sword.
Yeah.
Nick Fury is at like a Sword station up in space. Is the DODC going to be our connection to getting Kamala with Monica or with Bree? Do we ever see Nick Fury in this show? Because he has a connection to these characters as well. A lot of interesting ways it could go. Oh, and we also need to set up Secret Invasion with the Skrulls, and there's a lot of Marvel connections in that too. But is there any last thing you guys want to talk about really quick before we wrap up and head on to Obi-Wan?
I love the show. I can't wait for what's next. Hopefully the guy's not a creeper, but I think the man will be, because they've been doing that too. Because they kind of did that with the Hayward, director Hayward from WandaVision. He became the bad guy, right? So Sword became the bad guy in that series, just because we're rooting for Wanda to, kind of get her way at the end of the show. So maybe they'll do something similar, and we'd have no idea where this actually lives in the timeline other than after Endgame. So this could be, all of these shows could be happening simultaneously, timeline wise, and we won't know until they hammer that out, basically, because they were very ambiguous with when does Moon Knight happen. They never give you an inkling of when that show was taking place.
I'll just say I didn't really know whether I was going to be into this, whether I was interested in it going in, and after watching it, I'm excitedly looking forward to the second episode just to see what direction they're going and how they're going to do it, because they.
Oh no!
Do you guys hear that?
Nope.
Oh, well, I apologize. Love you, technology. I just said they did such an excellent job on episode 1 that I had no expectations of this show whatsoever going in. I wasn't sure what we were going to get, and they did such a good job that now I'm actually excited for episode 2.
Right.
As opposed to the next show we're going to talk about, where I'm like, dear Lord, please do a corrective step. On episode 5.
What an excellent transition, guys. Okay, so that is wrapping up our first review episode. I hope you enjoyed it for Miss Marvel. Now we will see everyone hopefully here. We'll transition over to the next review, our Kenobi Shobi, where we talk about episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Scott, I believe, are you following us over there for that?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, let's get.
I have things to say.
I'm sure we all have things to say, and hopefully you guys have things to say as well. This link is consistent for the next show, streamlabs.com/flickandreel. If you want to get some of your questions, comments, concerns, and all that stuff, you can start doing that right now, and we'll see you over there in just a little bit. Bye-bye.